In a land where cacti outnumber cell towers and the horizon stretches further than a fiber optic cable, it's time for Valley's Bits, Bytes and Banter, the podcast that looks a bit behind the scenes of a broadband provider, takes a big bite out of the tech world, and serves up a healthy dose of banter with people in our community. And now, without further ado, here's your host, Bob Dahlstrom.
Hey, everybody. As Lee Patterson said at the top of the show, I am your co-host, Bob Dahlstrom, with my partner in crime, Ralph Score. And thank you for listening to Valley's Bits, Bytes, and Banter, the podcast we put together. We release a new episode every other Wednesday. Yep. They're hosted on Podbean, so you can get the free app or go to podbean.com and listen, download, and share. And definitely do that.
Yeah.
Download, listen,
there's a whole bunch
share.
of other places you can catch our podcast, too.
Yeah, we're now on Apple Podcast. You can find us on iHeart, Spotify, Amazon, a lot of places, most places where you download and get your podcasts. Check us out there.
We also have a YouTube version, and then we also have it on our website under our blog page, vtc.net/blog, and you find all the episodes, and that's a direct link to the Podbean site.
You can always bookmark our page right there so you can follow along. So thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. We always feature special guests and interesting people in our community on every episode, and today is no exception. And we'll get to our special guest in a little bit here.
And I think it has a lot to do with what we're doing as a company out there right now as far as some of the expansion we have going on.
I think we get lots of questions, even out in the community. Yeah. And whether in official channels or just if we're walking around and people know who you are, we're a rural community. Yeah, like they ask questions.
Are you ever coming here?
Yeah. We heard about these fiber projects. What's going on? And we're going to talk about that a little bit today, give you some updates on some of that stuff and more. We're going to have a great time.
Yep. So I just pulled some stuff from the FCC today, and of course, one of the things we do every year, we go out and we talk to schools about internet safety and scams and cybersecurity, and this is something that came down from the FCC recently, and this is basically off of the top scam list. In 2024, and this is really coming out in their reporting now, that insurance scams topped the list of robocall complaints with the FCC, and while these calls tend to spike during healthcare open enrollment season, they'll use the similar approaches all year long. Some of the scam tactics include calls or texts pretending to be from government entities, right, or insurance providers, and they offer free health screenings or gifts is what the catch is.
Of course, offer something free to hook people.
Yeah, and don't be fooled because the imposters are trying to steal your personal identifiable information or your money or both, right? One example of an insurance robocall campaign reported spoofing the number of Blue Cross Blue Shield to impersonate the well-known insurance company. The Real BCBS offers fraud prevention advice on its website, warning that it has received complaints about scammers who use spoofing to make it appear that calls are coming from its national Call Blue customer service number. But the toll-free number can only receive incoming calls. So it can't really, you can't get a number, you can't get a call from them. Okay, so they don't use the number to make calls. So if Call Blue customer service number appears on your caller ID, the insurer says that such a call is malicious and you should not answer. Okay? And a couple of tips for this is don't answer calls from numbers you don't recognize, and these are real common. You know, we kind of know that. It's same with emails. If something comes into your email and you don't know who it's from, don't link on it. Don't do anything with it. You know, if it used to be, verify and what is it? It used to be trust and verify.
Right. We were just talking about this. We've talked about this several times. Yeah. Now it's the opposite of that.
It's verify, and then don't even trust it then. And no one will fault you if you don't.
Correct.
They know what's up with it, and you can always get a hold of whoever it supposedly comes in from, contact them immediately and find out, hey, do you guys actually send something out?
I was reading a statistic this morning, as a matter of fact, that officially now, over half the traffic on the internet is not human.
Oh, yeah.
About 51% is now like robocalls, spam, things like that. It's not human people.
Yeah. Yep.
As opposed to non-human people.
That's it. And now with the generative AI stuff that's going on.
Oh, yeah.
And people are diving deep into it. And if you're really savvy, you can tell, and the whole idea is you are the best defense against the scams. No matter what you've got as far as software or whatever, you're the last defense for everything, whether it's for you personally or whether it's for your employer. It's up to you to make sure that you're doing your due diligence and not letting it slide by. Don't let your guard down.
Be wary, protect yourself and your information. And if somebody's calling up, they called you and are asking a lot of questions and you feel kind of pressured for it, that's a good sign that this is not legitimate.
Well, any sense of urgency for a call to action that's the first red flag.
Right.
Take action now. And even the grandparent scam, the kidnapping scam, that's taken new twists and turns, but they want you to panic. One of the latest ones we've been seeing is, hey, you missed your Easy Pass toll.
Right. Everybody's been getting those texts lately. And if you didn't know, Arizona has no toll roads.
Yeah. But it's all about casting the big net, right? And it's like, because somebody out there in New Jersey or Connecticut is going to go, oh crap,
boy,
I missed my toll. I better call these guys.
Yeah, or did I go driving? Yeah. Maybe I drove on a toll road, didn't know it.
Well, and weren't you saying that you were in Florida recently and thought, did I miss something?
Yeah, when I immediately got that, that's the first thought in my head, because timing wise, I was just there, but then it's like, come on.
Yeah,
I was not. Yeah. I know I was not.
Exactly. So anyway, so that's just good stuff to keep in mind, for your own safety, for your family's safety, and everything. Protect yourself, protect those you love, and protect those around you. Right.
When we're talking about being safe, I'm sorry, Ralph. You have something else?
Oh, just really bad stuff.
Oh, that's right. We're going to talk. Yes, please.
Yeah. Well,
please, Ralph.
This is protect your stomach from this stuff. Okay. And it's not too horrible. These are the 5 weirdest foods ever listed in the world.
Our guest is going to step away for a minute.
And some of these actually you'll know what they are. Right. Chicken's feet. Right. And considering how many places it's eaten, perhaps it's unfair to deem this weird. Still, it's made mostly of skin, making it a little gelatinous in texture. Right. They're pretty tasty when flavored properly, but the bones get on your nerves after a while.
I appreciate the description, Ralph. Thank you.
Like that.
Thank you very much.
Then there's haggis, right? Haggis. Oh. I was going to go to Scotland, and of course the thing is, well, you have to try haggis if you go to Scotland, right? It's sheep's heart, liver, and lungs. It's minced and mixed with onions and oatmeal. But I actually heard somebody tell me it's really good because they fry it up. It's actually fairly tasty. You slice it up.
Very
and all
good.
That. I guess it's good if you smother it in ketchup.
Waste not, want not, Ralph. Ketchup makes everything better.
I do have something similar to haggis. Similar to haggis is scrapple from Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah.
And I love it, and you can actually get it at Fry's in Arizona.
Really?
And I do have 2 in my freezer right now. So scrapple fried up with a little bit of ketchup. I don't smother it, but it's amazing. Okay,
all right, I like
and
that.
And it's basically all the parts. They do add a little cornmeal,
right?
So it does bind it a little bit, but yeah.
Otherwise it's really gonna look weird on your plate. Yeah.
Stick to your ribs.
Okay, how about this one? How a tripe, right? The stomach lining of various animals,
right?
Sponge-like honeycomb texture. It looks like some weird kind of sea plant life, peculiar but not entirely appetizing rubbery texture. They serve it with various sauces to add flavor, or simply with an accompaniment like onions. Another one is kosh.
Wait a minute. Tripe. We're in the Southwest.
I know it's big. Menudo.
It's for
menudo.
menudo.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So down here, it's not something too weird. But I guess worldwide,
it's a dish served many places.
Yeah, in many places. Yeah, and that's the whole thing. They sound weird, but they're really worldwide, and they're actually, another one. Now, this one actually sounds pretty gruesome. Is kosh. It's a dish made up of stewed cow's feet and head. It was once a winter comfort food, but it's now considered a delicacy, and I'm sure it's fine so long as you don't mind that grinning skull staring at you through the cold dead eyes, right? So I didn't write that.
We did butcher a cow. And my husband's grandma got really mad because he didn't bring the cow's head to her. He just disposed of it like a lot of people do.
Yeah,
right.
And she wanted to bake it up in the oven because apparently the cow skull meat is amazing.
Well, that's like on a pig's head, the jowls in that. The stuff that you get, the extra stuff you get off of that is really actually tasty.
I am perfectly fine with never trying any of those dishes ever.
Okay.
Are you serious?
Yes, I am.
Especially this last one.
I never have tried any of those dishes.
All right, give us the last one.
The last one is tuna eyeballs, right? Now, although it sounds
Hold
nasty.
on, I should have waited before this one before I gave my answer.
Because Bob loves tuna eyeballs.
The only thing I like better than tuna
Apparently
are tuna eyeballs.
Apparently, it's rather tame, tasting pretty similar to squid or octopus. None of the gunk you'd normally associate with slicing up eyeballs then, right? So
I don't even know what to say to that, Ralph. I am glad I'm not hungry right now.
I'm on a diet.
If I would have been, I would not be.
I'm on a diet right now, and this is helping. So,
all right, well, I got a couple of things to throw at you real quick. Do you know what the 3 most common, we talk about security, people protecting their information online, and always coming up with, especially nowadays, you have to be smart and inventive with passwords.
Right.
Do you know what the 3 most common passwords still are?
I think password 123 or password 1 2 3 4 5.
1 2 3 4 5 is one. That's one of the most common passwords.
Right.
Hold on to your seat. 1 2 3 4 5 6
Is the second one.
the second one.
Oh my gosh.
And the third one, what do you think that one is?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Password. Oh, the word password. Those are the three most common passwords still used today, ladies and gentlemen. If you use any of those passwords,
You're an idiot.
no, you need to change it. It reminds me of the
Well,
scene.
you're still an idiot, but-
Remember the Spaceballs?
Yeah.
When he said he had to give him the combination. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to saving the Earth or the planet. And he said, it sounds like something somebody put on their luggage. And the boss comes in and he goes, that's the exact password of my luggage. So change those passwords, people, if you got that. And did you know one more thing? Did you know the very first web page ever created is still running on the internet?
Yeah.
Did you know that? The very first one back in 1991.
And that was, and there wasn't. It was a very simple commute. Wasn't it a picture or something like that?
No, that was the very first photo ever put on there. But this
right.
is the very first web page. Tim Berners-Lee created it in 1991. He was a gentleman that was working on creating websites and what to use the internet for. And it's still out there. No graphics, no background. It's all just text and links on how to use the internet.
Yeah.
Even from back in 1991.
Well, I know originally it was really for military. You know, it was really infrastructure for military and people to communicate using the internet in its burgeoning years. So
speaking about things still running, we're still running. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to introduce our special guest and have some very interesting things to talk about, guys. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, are you playing Fortnite?
Yeah.
Let's go, man. I'm gonna beat you so bad.
You know I could go pro if I wanted to. You do not stand a chance. Besides, we always just play against each other.
Yeah, that's true.
We need to find more people to play with.
Hey, Valley Telecom has the Fiber Gaming Network, an online community where we can compete in tournaments and win real prizes, or just meet new gamers and participate in casual game nights.
Whoa, that's so cool. But how much does it cost?
It's actually free. Valley Telecom is providing this to their community at no charge. We just go to vtc.net/gaming and sign up.
Wow, that's so awesome. Now I can show everyone I'm the best.
Get in the game with a Fiber Gaming Network powered by Valley Telecom. Go to vtc.net/gaming to sign up today. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, for Valley's Bits, Bytes, and Banter, the podcast I do with my co-host and partner in crime, Ralph Score. I'm Bob Dahlstrom. And I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions or suggestions or ideas or even comments, we would love to hear them. You can email us at podcast@teamvtg.net. And we've got so many great guests. I want to urge everybody out there, listen to those other episodes. A lot of great information. And today is some really timely and good information, I think, for everybody we're going to share.
And, you know, coming up in May, we're going to be having our year in review, which is going to be some highlights of all the people we've had on the show.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. We've done this for almost a year now.
Yeah.
Our year is coming up in May.
I know.
And we're excited because
I don't know
when we
if it's
sat down and
exciting
did
or
this.
scary. You know?
Yeah. And we're going to have a special anniversary episode where some of our highlights, some of the things we really loved, we thought were some of the can't miss things about previous episodes and more. So be sure to listen to that and tune in for that. That'll be coming very, very soon. But let's introduce today's special guest. You heard her a little bit in our last segment talking here. And she has a long history of community outreach. I think that's fair to say, especially in the Benson area where you live, right?
I'm a Dragooner.
Yes.
So
I said area.
I have a foot in both the Wilcox area and the Benson area.
That's true.
Yeah.
But neither of them will let me in the city limits, so I'm in Dragoon.
Is that like because you did something in both those areas? They just
oh boy,
they're just putting the caution flag up. There's no verified thing I've done. They're just a little cautious.
We'll talk about rule breaking later.
Yeah,
exactly.
You've been heavily involved in this as an example of things in the communities. You've been heavily involved in the Benson Butterfield Rodeo. You've been president of the Benson Chamber of Commerce, and those are just community things, not work related, but. You've also been community outreach administrator for the Arizona G&T Cooperatives in Benson. You've been a campaign manager for a state Senate candidate. You ran for office, Cochise County Supervisor. You've done a lot of things and are still very much attached to outreach, not only community, but nationwide. And you're currently the Valley Telecom Regulatory Affairs Specialist. That's an interesting title. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Heather Floyd to the podcast. Heather, how are you?
I'm happy to be here. I've listened to your podcast from the beginning. I don't think I've listened to all episodes, so I got to go back and see what I missed. But I've enjoyed getting to know the people in our community, probably because it really relates to community outreach, which I love.
Right. That's the goal. We want to talk and get people to see interesting people who live in our community and what drives them.
And you talked a lot about my community outreach, and the underlying focus for most of that, I'd have to say, I was a co-op girl with the electric co-ops. Now I'm a co-op girl here with telecommunications at Valley.
Right.
But it's all promoting rural. Any one of those things I did, whether it was the Chamber of Commerce, helping people run for office, running for office myself, it's how do we promote our rural areas and make sure that they're strong partners within our states, whether it be Arizona or what we're doing in New Mexico.
100% for that. And kudos to you for doing that, because that's always been your theme, is drawing attention to the rural communities and their needs, the needs in the area and the people who are here, how things we can strengthen the rural communities. You've always been an advocate for that. And that's awesome.
People forget all of our food, fiber, most of our water and our power come from rural.
Right.
So if we have weakened rural communities, we're not able to provide that to the rest of the state. So help us stay strong. We can help the state be strong.
Very well said. I like that. All right. Thanks for attending the show, everybody. Thanks for listening. The show's over. Heather closed it out right there. Well, no, you're exactly right. And I always tell people, because I've moved around a lot when I was growing up, just the nature of my dad's employment. And I've lived in towns much, much bigger than Wilcox. I've lived in towns smaller than Wilcox. And I have to say, the community area we live, I love where we live, down here in Southeast Arizona and Southwest New Mexico. Awesome people, awesome rural communities, and really pulled together and really strong, in my opinion.
Well, I grew up back east, and that's why I know about the scrapple from Pennsylvania. So I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I moved out to Arizona at 16, and I choose to remain in rural Arizona. I can live anywhere, once you become an adult. But I've chosen to make this my home, and I enjoy the communities. And we mentioned earlier, I have a foot in Benson and a foot in Wilcox. And I keep trying to find, both of them have high points, and I can't figure out why they haven't been able to cross-pollinate. For example, Benson has a lot of more retail options.
Right.
But I must say that Wilcox has much better events. And why can't we bring some strength to events in Benson and some strength in retail options to Wilcox? And it's still a mystery to me.
It's that rivalry between the two high schools.
It all boils down to that, right?
With Senior Loman Trophy.
Yep, the Senior Loman Trophy. That's it for high school football.
Just talk to Tim Bowlby and Caleb Blaschke about
who we both had on the podcast.
Yeah. And I've been to many of those games where they were fighting for that trophy. It's always a good game.
Yeah. It is. It's always a good game. Records don't matter. It's one of those rivalries. Yeah. You're always going to have a great one. It usually boils down to the end, to the wire. But one of the things we're talking about too in rural communities right now, obviously, and it probably really came to light more after the pandemic, but with people working from home, people that are doing more and more using the internet for streaming, gaming, working, educating, healthcare, everything they're using it for, internet is so important to especially the rural communities. So as people know, if you've seen us out in the communities, you read our press releases, you see our website and our social media posts, we are really deep in fiber expansion projects right now, where a lot of our communities we're upgrading from DSL to fiber. We're going into new territories like Patagonia. We're so excited about bringing fiber internet to Patagonia. And we're talking about a lot of things, the reasons these are happening. But how is it happening? Why now? I think are some of the things we get to hear. Why is this becoming a project now? When are we going to get it? When is it coming to our communities, Heather? And that's where you come in on a lot of this. You've been heavily involved, really getting these funding done for these projects and the fiber projects. So let's talk a little bit about that. I know you brought in here visually. And we're talking, what I think also makes this a little more difficult, we're talking two states because we cover Southeast Arizona and Southwest New Mexico. So yes, you have to figure out the process for Arizona. And once you do that, or vice versa, you got to figure out the process for New Mexico, which may or may not be the same. But still, we have to do those processes. So how's that been going? I mean, as far as the process you've been involved in?
Well, you alluded to the timing, and it was after COVID. Both states had grant programs. So Arizona had the Arizona Broadband Development Grant, And New Mexico had the Connect New Mexico pilot program, and then they had another one that was just called Connect New Mexico. And I'm like, why are the titles different? It drove me nuts. But so that COVID is really what drove it. And both states coughed up different amounts of money to fund those programs and to get internet, higher speeds of internet out into their communities so people could be more connected. That's when it's the first grants that we've ever applied for. Valley had never really been on the grant forefront before, and we did apply in both Arizona and New Mexico. New Mexico, we concentrated on our cooperative area to serve our members better, that we have members in Columbus, New Mexico, and that was the first New Mexico grant we got. We're really excited because that project's almost finished.
I know, can't wait.
And, that's one of our biggest exchanges, too, as far as number of homes and number of people.
Especially in the cooperative territories, yeah.
Yeah, and for folks that don't know, that's directly south of Deming. It's about 30 minutes south of Deming, right on the border of Mexico and New Mexico. So it's a pretty vibrant, quirky community, and I say that with all love. And the library is a real hub down there. We enjoy going.
And we actually got to have Maria Constantine, the librarian, on, and
fascinating.
She referenced
awesome
some of the
stories.
quirkiness of that community.
She really did.
Yeah.
So that one we chose because it was going to serve our members better. We also have another one that we got awarded last year to serve members better, and that's Animas Cotton City Hachita. And that one's getting ready to kick off, and we're hoping to have some folks connected by the end of the year. But again, that's filling in the holes within our member territory. Now, in Arizona, our choices were a little different. We were actually invited by 2 different counties to help broaden the service in their counties, and that was Graham County had invited us. We already served some of Graham County, so that was a good fit for us, and we enjoyed working with them on that. And the other one you had mentioned earlier, Santa Cruz County, which is where Patagonia is, they invited bids from providers, and I believe 4 different internet service providers applied, and they did choose us to be their provider for that project. That project was originally Patagonia, Sonoyta, Elgin, but because of the amount of funds the state of Arizona had at that time that they were spreading throughout the state, they did ask us to cull that project to just Patagonia. But it's pretty nice to be invited by a county to want to work together.
Yeah, for sure.
To improve services for their residents. So that's exciting. And as you mentioned, Patagonia is getting ready to be turned up here soon. I know you're going to have folks out on the streets in the next week or 2.
We are. We're going to go door, leaving information for everybody that's time to sign up, pre-sign up for service. It's coming.
And we worked really closely with Town Manager Ron Robinson and Mayor Andrea Wood, and their community is looking forward to it. They have just had low connectivity. Yeah. So what they call a lot of the government, whether it be federal or state government, is using terms like underserved and unserved.
Right.
So what does that mean exactly?
Okay, so unserved, they will deem anyone that can't get speeds above 25 megabits by 3 megabits per second. So the 25 is the down, what you're pulling down, and the 3 would be what you might be pushing up. Like when you're pushing up a podcast, you need some upload.
Right.
People that are underserved are deemed anybody that has less than 100 by 20 megabits per second. So a lot of our rural communities where we haven't been able to expand to fiber is where that would hit. Fiber is deemed the best technology. It's the future-proof technology, and if you have fiber, you can get gigabit service, and definitely you can be doing multiple podcasts at once.
Yeah, I like that. Hey, how about that?
So those are terms that are used universally, whether it be federal or state governments, and so those were both state projects that I talked about. Both of the states with the funding within that they had, and some of them probably came from some COVID monies. Let's be fair. So it probably did come from the federal funds, but then they chose that instead of doing it for other COVID-related things, they needed to invest in their broadband infrastructure. Now we're into what we call the BEAD season, broadband expansion access. Oh, great. Now I don't even know what it is. Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. I've been calling it BEAD for 2 years, so you forget exactly what it stands for. And that one is federal funds from the IIJA, which is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And that is where they designated funds to go to each state to what they want is universal service. Universal service means everybody is at least by 100 by 20 megabits per second.
Right.
Every resident. So they...
How much money is that mean as far as like for, say, a state of Arizona? Or how did they allocate that?
So they did allocate it based on what the numbers were for unserved and underserved. Each state got to advocate whether or not they thought there were more or less. New Mexico, I think they advocated for some, but they were still just given the same amount they were initially deemed, and that was $675 million for New Mexico. Arizona did some really good advocacy, and to be honest now, I don't recall how much additional they have. But the final number that they got was $993 million to serve their residents. So Arizona has divided their areas into 60 project areas, and New Mexico, theirs are a little smaller, and they have about 130 proposed project areas.
Now that's all. You think about that because maybe people don't think about that. You get this money, and they had to do this ahead of time because they had to use that information to ask for the funds for each state. But the work that would have gone into to properly identify where do we need the most help for bringing up from unserved or underserved communities. That's an incredible amount of work for both states on the backside.
And I think, when we went down and we did the first press release for Columbus, it was very obvious there that is a really needed area because they have less down there and they have a big enough population that really doesn't get it, and they're very economically depressed down there too.
And that's why they're all at the library. They want to get connectivity, and so they're all logging in at the library.
Yeah, because we serve the library, and they have a beautiful facility, a nice area there for people to come use the internet and bring their laptops and all that. So I'm assuming, Heather, they had to gather all this information, so they had to go somewhere to get a little help in figuring out where are the most needed areas. And where are some of the areas? I mean, I'm assuming they asked some of the providers.
So the FCC has really been working on their mapping, and it's getting better and better. We're not all the way there yet, but we had initially talked about how each state had what was considered their unserved and their underserved. Well, then after the monies were allocated, there was a whole challenge process. So they published what it was, and the public could see it as well. So ISPs could see it. Internet service providers of all sorts could see it, as well as residents. You at your house, you could put your house in, and it could say what the services available at your home were. And if you thought it was different, or if they were over-reporting, you could have said, no, I can't get those services here, and you could have put in a claim. So there was a whole challenge process between the internet service providers saying what was available and what wasn't available. We did go in and do a couple challenges ourselves. You had mentioned we have some other fiber builds that we're doing in our member service areas, and the map didn't reflect that those builds were happening within the next 6 months. So we did challenge those and say, hey, we're going to have fiber internet at these addresses by this date. And so by the time BEAD is open, those will already be served. So it was a whole challenge process. Bob, you had mentioned that you watched a video. It says there's 14 steps to BEAD.
Yes.
And to be honest, you're probably right. And I've forgotten the first 4 or 5 because that pain is already gone. And we're now on to the pain points for 6, 7, and 8. But
it's a tremendous process.
So let me let you all know where we are now. So that challenge process ended by the end of the year for both states. Now they had the application periods open first quarter for both of them. Arizona, all the applicants for round 1 were due March 7th. Round 1, they deemed that for priority projects. And that was ones that could serve a gig by a gig at any given address. So essentially what that means is they probably had to be fiber projects, all of them.
To provide that, right.
So they will open a round 2 where you could offer some alternative technologies, and that will be coming up in June. So right now, round 1 is closed. The state's reviewing them. They may or may not contact different internet service providers to start negotiation and curing of some of these projects, but we're not going to know till late fall.
I know, we're excited. Can't even really talk about it. let's just say we're excited possibilities that are coming up based on that.
And let me just say, the reason Bob's excited is because Valley did put in BEAD proposals for both Arizona and New Mexico, primarily that match up with our current service territory, because we want to be able to serve our current regions at a better, higher level of connectivity.
And we really hope we get, like we have, and I have to give props to you guys, you and Christy Lee, Troy Judd, everybody that's worked on the previous bids that we got, because every one of those we submitted eventually were approved, right? We were approved for them. I mean, there were some changes to them and stuff in some of those areas, but
I don't normally brag or get too conceited, but currently, and knock on wood, what do we have around here? Valley has 100% success record with our grants. We had received 5 out of 5. It took over 2 years for one of them to come back around, and we got it.
right.
But we're super excited because it just allows us to serve our communities better.
Yep.
Yeah, and newer communities. For example, we did Thatcher not too long ago, and that is a community that sorely needed some improvements in communications, telecommunications.
But let me brag on the company on that, because they chose to invest $9 million of Valley funds to build that out.
For
and
that
that's
one, yes.
very exciting when we want to invest in your community.
Yeah.
It's because we believe in your community. Let me just catch up one deadline I didn't say. New Mexico, that deadline closed on March 24th. Those applications were due, and it's in the same process as Arizona right now, curing and talking to ISPs.
So let's talk about the ones that are approved. That the 5 for 5 we got approved. Let's tell people. Let's give them a brief review of those projects, so they know the areas that we are able to do and able to upgrade soon. I say soon, the next few years, because of those projects, because of those grants.
So as I mentioned, we hadn't put in grants before. 2 of them, we went in with grant writers. We were invited to Graham County to do the Graham County project. That would be Bryce, Eden, Fort Thomas. And CBA advocates really helped writing the grant for that. They were also the advising group for Santa Cruz County, and we eventually were invited to apply for Patagonia and received the nod as the vendor for that. So they helped drive that, which will be Patagonia.
Right.
The one I think Valley was most excited about, for one, it was right in our backyard, and for 2, we wrote that one all on our own. So that was West Wilcox, and that's serving a community right adjacent to a fiber community we have within the city of Wilcox. So serving that little rural area, our neighbors right there next door with fiber was super exciting, and it was the first one we had done all on our own. Very much exciting, and gave us the confidence to go for the communities that we're talking about in New Mexico, and that was the Columbus grant that we wrote on our own, and also the New Mexico grant for Animas, Cotton City, Hachita.
And we've just recently wrapped up, Ralph and I and the rest of us in marketing, some of our customer relations people. We went out door to door West Wilcox and left information for people to tell them about that. And like any other rural community, right? There's Wilcox proper, but so many people live just outside the town limits. There are a lot of homes
And they work,
that are going to be served now with
and
fiber.
they work in Wilcox.
And they work here, correct. Yeah. And it's exciting to expand those out to those large number of homes and residences out in that area that are now going to see an increase in their communications as well.
Yep.
Well, that also helps with our wireless west of Wilcox, because if we're connecting about a third of that region of folks with fiber, it's going to alleviate radio traffic on our wireless tower, and we can help connect more folks in that area that we were having to tell no before.
Yeah,
It's going to free up space, too, for those that want more,
Yeah, more speeds in that area as well.
Right.
Folks.
And so, we get, and I guess to me, the short answer is, gang, if we haven't brought fiber to you yet, most I'm talking to our existing territories, our plan is it's coming. But there's a lot of things we're waiting on, and it depends on some things before that can even happen.
Yeah.
But we're excited about the future and about all the work you guys have done to bring this to fruition, even the projects that are already approved, and hopefully the next wave of ones that are approved as well, to keep that momentum going.
We never say never.
Never say never.
Well, the other thing we'd have to add, we're up 5 employees from last year. That's the amount of work we have going on. Our employee count is moved from 80 to 85. And for a small provider, that's a big deal. That's a big investment from Valley, saying we believe that we can keep these people steadily employed. We have that much work for them. And having the 5 extra people helps us do the work quicker.
Yes, it does. And give people the connection that they're all wanting so badly. And man, we are just so excited about the future. We really are. We talk about it frequently on the show, Ralph and I do. But we're going to take a quick break. If that's okay with you, Heather?
I can take a break.
Great. We're going to take a short break, guys. We'll be right back after this. Stick around.
The endless options for streaming movies, shows, and sports can be overwhelming. Valley Telecom is here to help with Stream Now, your ultimate online reference for all things streaming. Whether you're a binge watcher or just looking for a quick episode to enjoy, we've got you covered. Discover recommendations, compare platforms, and find the best content for your favorite streaming devices. Stream Now makes it simple to get the most out of your streaming experience. Enjoy the journey of discovering your next favorite show, movie, or live event all in one place. The best part is it's free to use. Unlock the door to endless viewing possibilities by going to gostreamnow.com/VTC today.
Welcome back to Valley's Bits, Bytes, and Banter. I'm your host, Bob Dahlstrom, along with my co-host and partner in crime, Mr. Ralph Score. And yeah, you heard the spot there. Guys, if you ever want to have any questions about streaming, what platforms are there? What devices do I need? What shows are they? How much do they cost? Are there any free? What speed do I need? We have all those questions for you, and it's available to you 24/7 for free at gostreamnow.com/VTC. Go check it out.
It is a one-stop shop for everything streaming.
It really is. And it'll answer virtually every question you may have about streaming. Now, before the break, we were talking with our special guest today, Heather Floyd. Heather, let's put a bow on this talking about grant writing. Let's talk about the process, what it takes to submit a grant and to get some funding to help to do this fiber expansion projects that we do.
Yeah, you have a couple of phone books over there, don't you, with the steps that needed?
Yeah, holy smokes! You brought in the
like
stacks
the
for
Los
each state
Angeles
that you had
Times
to
phone
do.
book.
Very similar in size and very thick.
So any grant that's put out from any entity normally has what's called a NOFO, a Notice of Funding Opportunity. So you would definitely read through that and look for what the grant folks are looking for and what they want to award. Then sometimes they come with additional instructions. So you got to read through those, read through the applications. What you were talking about that I brought over were the BEAD guides for both Arizona and New Mexico. And since they're both funded through IIJA, that federal bill that was put through, they have some similarities, but both are asking for something a little different. Bob, I think you alluded to it earlier. Usually what we do if we have one in each state, we'll do one state first and get that one all wrapped up with a nice bow, and then we see what are the differences. And that's exactly what we did for BEAD, because the Arizona timeframe was March 7th. We did Arizona, got that one wrapped up. I did a quick analysis. What does New Mexico need that's different or in addition? And so we had a shorter list for that. Also, as we're writing more grants, when we did our original grants for Graham County and Santa Cruz County, we needed a whole write-up on who Valley is. You know, we've been a co-op since 1962 and the whole 9 yards. We needed managerial expertise. They needed a list of who our executives were and who our primary doers were on these grants. So there's about 8 folks that their resumes are included in the grants.
Wow.
As well. Not mine. I'm not that important. I just write the grant. But
you just put it together.
Other people that actually build these projects for us, their resumes are included. And so we have a really good template on those items. Granted, for each new grant, we'll read what they're asking for when it comes to organizational and managerial capabilities. And if they need some more information, we add. They also often ask, at what speeds you'll be able to serve at and what any latency would be. So those technical specs go in. Each project would have its own technical side too, like here's the designs for it, here's how many people we're going to be serving, here's how many miles of line. And Heath Bowen works really closely with Christy Lee to put those together. So Heather doesn't touch that, so we're all safe. The system's going to work. We have reliable people doing those.
Yeah.
I do more the organizational capabilities, managerial capabilities, and then whatever differentiators the different NOFOs are asking for. In previous ones, it was kind of economic, like What is the communities you're going to be serving? What does it look like there? Why is there a need there? I will a little brag. I don't normally, we said I'm not a very conceited person.
Right.
Letters of support are my specialty. And I think it's because I'm close to those communities and I know who to call and say, hey, here's what we want to bring to your community. Can you help us with a letter of support? And that's that community outreach stuff that I like about promoting rural. Anyway, so each project normally needs letters of support, whether you're getting them from government entities, schools, medical facilities, the type of people that are really going to benefit by having higher connectivity.
Right.
Then we get into BEAD had a lot of new things, and hence the phone books that I brought in as examples. But they did have a lot of workforce stuff involved that they were trying to bring forward. Some applied to us, but unfortunately a lot didn't. And I want to say it's because I don't think the folks that wrote, and I'm not saying our local folks, Arizona or New Mexico, but I'm thinking the federal folks that put out the NOFO, we all know they're east of the Mississippi, and I don't think they understand our rural communities as well. And I think that's fair to say across the board.
Understandable.
And some of the workforce things were like, are you going to have unionized workforce? Well, in rural Arizona and rural New Mexico, that's not really an option for us. So if you want our project built, it's because we don't have access to that. So we have to write up verbiage why. We also write up verbiage on who is going to be doing the work and what is your standard procedure. And as you know, 85 of our employees that we talked about earlier do live and work here. But with some of these bills, especially with 5 of them going on at the same time, we do contract out for construction.
Right.
So, but many of those folks have helped us in our areas before in their existing relationships. So we have to write what our process is for getting these folks and what we're going to include in the RFPs to serve our rural communities. We have had some new contractors come on because we have 5 projects currently, and we're hoping that we can use some of those folks for any potential BEAD applications that are approved as well. They do talk a little bit about digital equity, Ralph, and I know that's going to be your realm and reaching out to the community.
Right.
Digital equity, the real definition is threefold. One would be affordability. Can people afford the internet? The other one would be, do they have access to devices to get online, whether it's tablets or computers or phones? And then the third piece, which I think is the larger piece that Ralph helps address, is what you do on the internet, whether it's using Stream Now or how you use some of these different services, and basically driver's ed for the internet.
Yeah. And
That's a good description.
And we're actually working in close conjunction with like the Graham County Chamber, people like Vance Bryce and that, as far as what they want to accomplish with it too, to put on a series of classes that we can put on locally and also have them online.
Right. So. Yeah, digital equity is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
We need to make sure people understand what's available to them, how they can access it, and what information they can find on there, what they can do with it.
We want to take the fear away from it.
And the cybersecurity that Ralph addresses quite often as well. So we do those sort of things. We do also participate. We used to have the Affordable Connectivity Program offered through the federal government, and then the funding expired on that. And I know there's folks looking at reviving that, but we have to make commitments in these applications to say if there's a new program that will participate, and we have acknowledged that we would definitely do that so people could have some relief in accessing the internet price-wise.
Yeah, and we've happily done that and participated in those programs when they've offered them to help make it anything we can do to make it affordable or more affordable for people in our area to be able to sign up for the service that they need.
Yeah. Hey, I got a question for you, Heather. So, funding is a big deal. How does it play out? I know there's an issue with the Universal Service Fund going on right now, as far as in the courts and that, as far as it maybe going away in that. And how does that affect, say, like the money we get in the form of grants or BEAD and that kind of stuff, as far as what we're doing?
Universal service doesn't affect the grants. What universal service would affect would be our ability to maintain and operate our system.
So it's not so much building it, it's keeping it going.
Correct. So ever since they deregulated the telecom industry in 1996, there has been rural providers such as Valley that receive high-cost programming through universal service to help maintain and operate those systems in these really rural areas, because we have in some places one customer per mile, and that's just more expensive to maintain. So the government has assisted with that through the Universal Service Fund. Now, what Ralph mentioned, there was a Supreme Court case talking about the constitutionality of universal service. And it looks like that was just heard in late March, and we won't really have a decision until July 4th. But based on the questioning from the Supreme Court justices, it seems like they value the service. One of the bigger questions is what's called delegation of authority. So U.S. Congress has delegated the FCC to collect universal service funds on your telephone bills and distribute them. But what the FCC has done is delegated that authority to a group called USAC to do the administration function of that. And so that's kind of the question, is the delegation twice removed from Congress.
Right.
So we'll see.
So I know USAC's involved in like Lifeline and a lot of things like that.
Yeah, because universal service funds 4 things: high cost programs like Valley gets, E-rate, which funds discounts at the schools and libraries. There's a rural health fund to help fund rural clinics, and then also the Lifeline service that you just mentioned, Ralph, which would be, I believe it's $9.95 discount on the phone service currently.
Yeah, federal discount for that, because New Mexico also offers a state discount, where Arizona does not on that. So just making that distinction on that. But lots of funding, lots of opportunities out there. The process, I know, has been grueling, to say the least, to get those applications in. So kudos to you guys to getting them done. Now that's 10 that you have submitted. Right, first round was 5. Well, those weren't all grant funding, but
and I guess if we want to count BEAD by project area, which is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah.
We have 6 proposed project areas in Arizona and 3 in New Mexico. So it's an additional 9.
Wow. That's a
awesome.
lot.
That is awesome. So I just encourage people to follow us on social media, watch our website, press releases, things like that, where we talk about these updates. We put that information out there.
Yeah.
And of course, listening to the podcast is a good way to find that information out. So, Heather, I mentioned, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and just real quick, I want to talk about this, that community outreach. And one of the things we do as a cooperative is we're owned by our members at our core. And we like to give back. We like to do other things with our communities. One of the things we've recently got involved in the last few years is the Washington Youth Tour. And you've been heading that up as far as organizing it, administrating it for Valley. So do you want to talk real quickly about the Washington Youth Tour and tell people what's out there available for their students?
Well, that's one of my most favorite things to do, because if you're dealing with students, and everyone that says, oh, this generation, they're not doing anything, yada, yada, I'm like, have you actually talked to any of them? So when you're talking to the students that apply for the Washington Youth Tour, in our case, it would be people 15, 16, or 17, and just hear what they're excited about and what they're interested in. It just encourages you.
Right.
As somebody that's a little more seasoned in their life, you're encouraged to know that there's some quality youth out there looking for future opportunities. And that's what Washington Youth Tour offers. It offers a little sneak peek at what goes on at the legislative level, where these decisions are made, who these decision makers are. One of my most favorite things, so quick. These are great new words I'm coming up with, guys. Quick overview. What they do is they go to the U.S. Capitol. They get to see the Smithsonian. They go to Mount Vernon. They go to Arlington National Cemetery. They go to the FCC. My 2 most favorite things, and maybe it's because I go to D.C. a lot and I already enjoy many of those amenities. And every time I go, I do enjoy it. Honestly, looking at the U.S. Capitol, when I look at it, I don't see the crazy political stuff we all see. I just see hope. Honestly, every time I look at that building, it gives me a renewed sense of hope for America.
Yep.
But the best thing for the students is they get to talk to congressional staffers. I don't know if the world at large knows, a lot of those congressional staffers are 30 and under. And some of the more seasoned ones are about 35 and under. And so they're talking directly to the students about their career path, how they got there, how they got interested, the work they're doing. And they're really encouraging these students to consider opportunities in D.C. The next day we go to the FCC, which sounds extremely boring, but they do a great job of explaining some of the stuff the FCC does. Ralph mentioned robocalls earlier. They're fighting that sort of situation and all sorts of other good things that they cover. But again, they look at the students, they talk to them directly about career opportunities and what it would be like to work for a government agency and how you can help with these national problems towards solutions. So between meeting the kids and seeing their energy and then seeing how well these folks that are working in DC explain career opportunities and things that could be in the future for these students, that's the best part.
And we do applications. We partner with the Foundation for Rural Service. They're the ones that put a whole group together. So it's when we select 2 students from our area to go from the application process, which has just ended for this year because the trip will be this summer. And they get to mingle and meet with and put with peers from across the country from other rural communities. And like you said, it just kind of brings that the world is a little bit smaller, right? How many things you have similarities, well, maybe some differences, but how similar you guys are no matter where you live.
And I've heard from more adult people that have gone on a Washington Youth Tour trip that they do have some lifelong friends that they're in connection with from other states that they met when they were juniors in high school and they're still communicating with. So it is 100 students from other similar rural communities, but every rural community has a different personality. We talked about it earlier with just our 2 neighboring communities here.
Right.
So they get to meet kids that have similar backgrounds and lifestyles as them, but what's the uniqueness for each different geographical area is amazing too.
Yeah, it's a great program. I wanted to talk about to give people a little more information about what it was before we wrapped it up on that stuff.
We normally will open applications in December and they'll run through the end of February. So it'll be on our website. Bob, you'll mention it many times on social media.
I do every year.
And then usually this year we had an opportunity they could do an essay or a video for the first entry. And then we will interview up to 10 students. Yep. And the interviews are great too. We just finished those.
And we're actually going to have a page dedicated to it. We're doing some
on the
website.
website. It'd be awesome. So, but before we go, Ralph, one of the things we normally do, and you'll get a chance to ask your question.
Well, I wanted to hear about rule breaking, but there may not be enough time for rule breaking about some.
We're talking about community outreach.
Book club.
Oh, real briefly, I'm in a family book club that was created by my son, who coincidentally was not a reader in high school, so we find it hilarious he went into book club. And he started a book club with my oldest daughter and I first. And when it came down to the first book I wanted to choose, I was going to choose something I read in high school. I thought they might care and be interested in what I read. Apparently that was a violation of book club rules. I didn't realize none of these rules are written, but apparently I've broken every one that exists. So you can't bring a book that you've already read. You can't read ahead in the book club. And I don't think I necessarily did. I think I just alluded to the fact, so there might have been a slight book bullying going on.
I love the fact that there are rules and sanctions in a family book club.
And your son is enforcing the rules.
Yes.
Well, the son didn't show up for a book club.
Oh,
one
he
day.
violated the rules then.
So he did violate the rules. My husband interfered because the only reason he knew my son didn't show up is because we were actually on a road trip at the time, and I log in to do the book club while we're on the road, and he's like, well,
that's dedication.
Where's the book club president? And he wasn't there. He was hosting a friend that was visiting. So now we have a dean of the book club that happens to be my husband, who doesn't read the
Dean
books,
Chris.
but he enforces the rules. So that's the rule breaking.
I love that. Everybody should have a family book club, I think. Yeah. Heather, one of the things we like to do in every podcast is we like to ask our guests the question of the day. Now, you have no idea what these questions are, but you have some control over it. So I have 7 questions.
I have zero control.
Well, you have 7 questions here. You get to pick the number, which question I'm going to read you, even though you don't know what it's going to be
I
yet.
think Ralph put the same one in every envelope.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger, Will Robinson.
Danger, whoop, whoop. So, Heather, I have 1 through 7. What number question would you like?
Let's go with number 5.
Number 5. Heather, if budget was not a problem, where would you like to go on vacation? Easy one.
We just went to Boston this year, which was great. We were celebrating my mom's 80th. But I've never been to Europe, and I've been eyeballing the Viking River cruises because you get to cruise along and see the coast on both sides. I haven't picked a specific cruise, but I would say probably somewhere in the area of Greece.
Nice.
Maybe if they could get a little Italy in there would be great. But I do think I want to do a river cruise in Europe.
No rogue waves there.
No, not usually.
No.
But that's awesome. That would be a fantastic trip. That'd be a great vacation. I think that's a good answer.
Yeah.
See, there's no wrong or right answers on this. Or there's no wrong answers.
Just possibilities.
Just possibilities.
That's it.
I was really hoping you were going to pick question 7. But
we could do a bonus one if you want.
do we have time?
Well, sure.
Question 7, Heather. Which animal would be super cool if it was the size of a horse?
Other than a horse.
Other than a horse.
I really like rabbits, but I think its size of a horse would be scary as heck.
That
Can
might
you
be
imagine
interesting.
how much lettuce and how much damage that would do to your yard?
What about a grasshopper the size of a horse? It almost would seem robotic to
Wait,
me.
what
It
was
would.
what was the horror movie that had the giant grasshoppers in it? Wasn't it?
Oh my gosh. Man, I can't come up with the name of it. Yeah.
That's one of those Gary Clement questions.
Yes, he would know that off the top of his head. But
no,
grasshoppers?
Grasshopper, because I don't want a giant bunny. They lose their cuteness big.
You know,
That's true.
one of the weird foods had grasshoppers, and they were giant grasshoppers. They weren't like the normal little ones that you see
Yeah,
hopping
good
around your
protein
yard.
source. There you
Yeah.
go.
Hey, and the size of a horse, you could feed a family well on that
That's
one.
right. Yeah,
That's true.
it could live in its exoskeleton.
There you go.
Home on the road.
Oh, it's tough to be a bug.
Yeah.
Is that what
Yeah,
was?
that's it.
And on that specific answer, Heather, thank you for being a guest today on the show. We really do appreciate you coming and talking about the BEAD funding and the fiber projects and all that we're doing. And for just maybe coming back sometime and give us updates on some of the projects. What do you say?
I can give an update anytime, but for BEAD, I'm thinking late fall might be when we want to pencil it in.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was thinking. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this episode of Valley's Bits, Bytes, and Banter. For my co-host and partner in crime, Ralph Score, and today's guest, Heather Floyd, I'm your host, Bob Dahlstrom, everybody. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.